Hi, welcome back. It's been a while since I've posted anything. When I made this YouTube channel, I had tons of ideas and tons of things I've wanted to talk about. But I feel like my videos have been so far and few in between. But honestly, um, I've been struggling a bit, and I guess today I just wanted to be open and honest, um and talk about my own personal struggles a little bit without getting into the crazy details, but um just because I feel like I'm not alone in this, and I kind of just want to talk out loud, because when I talk out loud I also process for myself. So yeah, I don't know. I I feel like I've just been really struggling with a lot of things in life lately. I feel like things are just kind of hectic and crazy currently in America anyways, and not like super crazy, but just like this constant noisy background that it's really hard to connect and to be calm. I feel like there's just this mild steadiness of anxiety throughout our country that is like affecting most people. I would feel I am I feel safe to say um, that there's probably majority of Americans are feeling some sort of anxiety to some degree, um, on a whole spectrum of like very mild, and it's hardly affecting them to like the extremes. And I'm not on either end of the spectrum. I fall somewhere in the middle. Um, but yeah, so I wanted to talk about that today. So, so yes, I have all these big plans. I have all these big thoughts that I want to share on my channel. But honestly, it's just been too overwhelming. Like I feel like everything is overwhelming. Where I have these thoughts and ideas, and when I'm alone and have a little bit of downtime, it just flows smoothly, and it's like, oh my gosh, yes, I love this. And I'm for those who don't know me, I'm like an obsessive learner. Like if I had a hobby, I would say my two hobbies are learning and traveling. I love both of them. They are definitely like my hobbies. um, so when I'm not traveling and when I'm not at home with my family, or like anytime I have downtime, my favorite hobby is learning. I'm a complete nerd. Um, so when I have some downtime, my kiddos are at school, or they're in bed for the night, or I'm driving, or whatever it is, like I constantly have something in, and I'm constantly learning. And throughout this process, as I've been learning more and more things about myself and about life and just how things function and how to function for myself better, and healing and all these different things, I've been also kind of audio journaling. Um, and I kind of essentially want this to be a kind of a mini version of audio journaling as well. So this is for me as well to look back on one day and just see where I've come from. But um, as I'm sitting and writing notes and journaling and recording and talking about my thoughts and what I've been experiencing on these moments that I have alone, it's so incredible for me, and I learned so much, and I have so much I want to share, and things that are so exciting to me, um, and just give me this spark of energy that I can't explain. And then as I'm coming, like, my time is going away from that time I have alone to study or be in my zone. As soon as I'm kind of shocked back into reality of working and being a mom and a wife and owning a home and like all the things that come in today's modern society, I feel like I go from like I'm in this zone and I'm learning and I'm on like I feel like I'm on fire in cloud 9 and it's like, oh my gosh, all this information is so fascinating. I can't wait to share it. And then all of a sudden I get smacked with the reality of my other current life and it's just like gone. It's just drained. And I don't know if anyone else can relate to this. Um, but I do very much struggle with like a balance of my inner life and growth and healing while also partaking in this current society. And it's just very draining. And I feel like I really struggle with like being in this modern society. Um, I don't know who else can relate with me on this, but um, like I said, I am a mom. I have two beautiful girls and a husband. And yes, we have a home and pets and the whole works. And I just feel like I very much struggle with the everyday common things like getting your kids to school on time without a meltdown or without a fight or like just chaos or like keeping a house clean. I feel like my house is always destroyed. Um, Keeping up on like any sort of activities, keeping up with any like friends. I feel like I've become so isolatory. Just because like, and not that I want to be, I would love to see my friends. I just feel like I don't have time. Like, and I can't tell if I like really don't have time or if it's just like me in my head. And I don't know if anyone else can relate to that feeling of like, is it just me being so emotionally and physically exhausted? I'm just too tired to see my friends, or do I just genuinely don't have time in my schedule? I feel like it's a little bit a mix of both. But yes, I feel like I very much struggle with these everyday, day-to-day things. Um, I feel like a lot of, oh, I don't know. I feel like I struggle with like a lot of like the mom norms. Like I'm really struggling like cooking and cleaning and kids and handling my emotional girls and um just always being there and available and calm and patient and loving. And I try and I try and I just feel like I always have the best intentions every single day or week or whatever it is when I'm starting over, like when I'm coming off of a work stretch and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be an awesome mom this week. Like I'm gonna surprise my husband, I'm gonna have the whole house cleaned, and I'm gonna be playing with the kids and we're gonna have a great time and we're gonna go do X, Y, and Z and it's gonna be amazing and we're gonna cuddle and like all these things. And I just have these best intentions and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is a week. I'm just gonna be a great mom and I'm so excited. And then it's like the second I walk through my door, I go from like so excited and all these expectations of how this week is gonna go, and it just crashes hard. Like I walk in the door, and the first thing I always see is like things that need to be done, or like the kids are like, they're coming and jumping on me because they're so excited and they haven't seen me, and everyone's so excited, and you kind of get that little rush of like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy and excited to see you. But then you just start to notice like little tiny things that need to be done. Like, oh, you go to the bathroom, you're like, oh, the toilet's dirty, I need to clean that soon. Or you go around the corner and you're like, oh, I never put my clothes away before I left, like I should do that soon. And even though my husband is honestly fantastic and helps me more, just super, super helpful. He's very clean, and he does like to pick up after himself. There's just some other things that are still around the house that need to be done. And so, despite his best efforts, yeah, it's just a never ending to do list. So, I just see the little things, like the toilet needs to be scrubbed, the clothes need to be put away, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, the kids are, like, excited, so jumping on you and, like, come play with me here and come play with me there and do this and do this and do this. And at first, you're just, like, so excited. And then I feel like by the end of even hours later, a day later, whatever it is, I'm just, like, crashing hard. Like, it's just, like, I go from, like, so excited to just, like, totally tapped out. Like, I'm so overwhelmed. And especially, like, you look at your emails and you have emails from school or teachers or from work or whatever it is. And then you, like, go in the fridge, you need to order groceries, and then you don't know what to order. You have to think of what to make. And then, like, I don't know, I feel like it's getting to the point that all of it is overwhelming. And the only way I can explain it is it's, like, shutting me down. So I come home and I'm so full of love and good intentions, and I just want the best for my family. And then within a short period of time, all of the other stuff, like, totally robs me of it. So I go from, like, so excited and full of love to just completely checked out, just, like, overwhelmed, frustrated, a lack of what's the word I'm looking for? A lack of patience, which is huge. My kids are 4 and 7, which require a lot of patience right now. And I want to be that kind and loving and patient mom. And I want to do all these amazing things for my family. I want to be that wife for my husband that I can just, like, keep everything clean and have, like, amazing meal made for him. But the reality is like, I feel like it's hard to even get out of bed. Like, I'm getting to the point where I feel like it's just been chronically stacking up for so long that I'm to the point where I'm just, like, checked out and tired. And so something even like this video, they feel too overwhelming most of the time to even do, even though it's something I like, even though, I feel like, I don't know, it's not like something that's hard to do. Like, I just sit down and I hit start and I talk, like, but that in itself just seems exhausting. Like, everything just seems exhausting. And this hasn't happened overnight. It's been an accumulation of things. And I feel like ever since I was young, I tend to have this pattern of I let everything build up and I sweep everything under the rug and I don't want to deal with anything and I want to pretend everything's great until, like, I just explode. So it's like I just, like, ignore, and then it's like a complete meltdown because I can't take another thing. So I naturally have this way of coping that isn't very healthy, and I am trying to figure it out so it gets better. But so I do have these tendencies, and I feel like I've been doing this on a chronic, long, like, time. Like, so okay. I'll see if this makes sense. Okay, so I have been with my husband since I was 19 years old. So we've been together for like 11 years. And when we first started dating, I was this just turned 19-year-old girl, and I was just so excited to have this boyfriend, and he had started his career and was making enough money where we could buy a home together right away. And I was just so excited to just like move into this, like, this, I don't know, like housewife life that you see on TV, and you're gonna like fall in love with this guy and your whole world's gonna be perfect, and like you can just sit in the kitchen with your apron and cook all these amazing meals, and your house is gonna be spotless, and you just like are waiting at home with this huge smile waiting for him to come home, and it's just everything is perfect. And I don't know, you just have this totally false image of what life is gonna look like. And I was all too excited and all too willing to fulfill that. Um, so when I started out on my journey of becoming a wife, we weren't married or anything yet at that point. We were just dating. But we bought this house, we're moving in together, we're kind of taking on these roles. And I was all too willing to just do absolutely everything for him. Like, I wasn't playing wife role, I was playing mom role. And so I was like, every day on Pinterest, looking for different recipes, constantly making different meals, constantly cleaning the house, having a bunch of social things and parties and get togethers, and going out on social events and sports games and whatever, and doing all the things my husband loves, like fishing and, you know, hanging out with his friends and doing all his things. Like, I just wanted to be this perfect housewife that he's just gonna fall in love with, and he just can't imagine his life without. So I did everything for him. And like, it's not like he didn't do anything. I should word it better. Like, I did all the like gender norm housewife things for him. Like, he was very good at taking care of the outside stuff, and whatnot, but I was just so like, did it all, right? Like, I'm gonna wash your clothes, fold them, put them away, make all your meals, do XYZ, pack your lunches for you. I remember at some point I was like waking up with him in the morning at 5 a.m., even though it's my day off, just to like help him pack his lunchbox and like say goodbye. Like, yeah. So that's how we started. And then over time, I accumulated more, what's the word? Like, responsibilities, right? So like, at first I was kind of in college doing online courses, working casually as I'm in nursing school. Well, at first, when we first started dating, I don't think I was even in nursing school. I was just in like doing my generals online, fairly easy classes, working at the hospital as a nursing assistant, transitioning to nursing school. And then, you know, you take on a little bit more. You're getting into nursing school now, so it's a little bit harder. You're a little bit more consumed in like schoolwork versus generals. But, you know, I'm doing my nursing program. I kind of cut back on working so I can focus on the program. And even though it's more stress, like, I just keep going on. Like, I just, you know, keep doing the things. I gotta keep doing what I started. And then next, you know, after nursing school, like, now I'm a working RN, and I gotta learn how to become an RN and all the things. And then shortly after graduating nursing school, and becoming an RN, I find out I am pregnant, and it was a complete surprise, with our first daughter, Audrey. And so you go down that whole route, you know. And right before I was pregnant, we got engaged, and then then we found out we were pregnant, and then we had the whole pregnancy, and then we became parents. And that whole time, I was still keeping these gender role norms, this perfect housewife, this perfect picture of whatever. Like, I still thrive for that, and that was my goal. And if I didn't make it, like, I felt like a complete failure. Also, I felt like anytime I didn't make it, my husband rejected me. And that may not have been true. I think it was a mix of things. I think it was like a lot of that was probably in my head, thinking like he hates me because I didn't accomplish X, Y, and Z. But the reality is like I hate me because I didn't accomplish X, Y, and Z. And also, he probably was genuinely frustrated because he went from like everything's being done to slowly over time, as I'm taking on more and more responsibilities, like I'm having a harder time keeping up. But like I kept going and I kept trying to do this for a very long time. And I feel like obviously when you become parents, your life completely flips upside down, and it's just the most insane thing that will ever happen to you in your life. But despite that, I feel like throughout having our first child, um, I still thrived to try to keep that up. Like I remember like our house still being pretty clean. I'm making meals regularly, doing all the things, like just trying to keep up. I mean, it's not as perfect as it used to be, but definitely still going. Well, not this time, like, I'm also a working mom. So as I have this baby, I am also working in the hospital doing 12-hour shift work um, as a nurse and RN. So then you're balancing um, work life, mom life, wife life, house life, all of it. And it's one big messy concoction. And again, I just kept striving for perfection. I call myself a recovering perfectionist, which I want to do a whole video on one day on perfectionism, because it carried on in my life way more than just here. So I feel like it wasn't until our second daughter, Anna, was born when it really just hit me like a brick wall. I was so not prepared for this second child. She was planned, Audrey was about a year and a little over a year old when we finally got married. And then Audrey was almost 3 when we got pregnant with Anna. So it's after the wedding. After we got married, we actually moved. So we moved to a different house. And then, so we're raising this toddler. We moved into a new house. I'm still working as an RN, still doing all the things. And then our second daughter was born. And for those who, who don't know Anna, my daughter, she is something else. So it wasn't the easiest transition. I feel like the transition to your second kid is so brutal just to begin with. Like I feel like I for some reason thought that it was going to be so easy. Like I'm like, oh, I've already been there, done that. I know what to expect. Because the first baby, I feel like with my first daughter, I was such an ultra perfectionist, and I would hyper research everything, like pay attention to everything, like obsessively try to make everything perfect for her. Yeah. So, so I just thought, like, because that's a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety when you're like constantly worried and like constantly like planning and thinking of like the best, and like, yes, a lot. I went a little crazy with my first daughter. So not only was I parenting my first daughter, I was a crazy parent. I was like literally weighing my baby with each nursing session for a while to see how much my baby was getting fed. Like that's how crazy of a mom I was. I would literally calculate how much formula I have to give her based on how much breast milk she was getting. Like, I drove myself crazy. So yeah, you go through the whole first kid and there's no manual for it. You have no idea what's going on and you're just constantly freaking out. Is this normal? Is that normal? Is this poop color normal? Like, is it normal they do this? Oh my gosh, she has a fever. What am I going to do? The whole world's falling apart. Like, all that stuff. Like, staring at them. Are they breathing? You know, every night when you're sleeping. Like, or when you're trying to sleep and you're not sleeping because you're so worried something's going to happen. Like, I went through all that with my first. So, I finally am getting into the stage with our first daughter where she's getting a little bit older. It's not so like hyper fearful. Like, you're kind of settling into parenting. Not that it ever gets like normal or easy, but it's just like you're just becoming more used to having the responsibility of another human life. So yes. So I thought, oh my gosh, the second kid, it's not going to be an issue. Like, it's going to be perfect. Everything's going to be fine. I've already been through the hard stuff. I already learned what to do. This is just, going to be a walk in the park, right? No, wrong. That is so wrong. That is like the biggest, like, no, so not true. The second is twice as much work. So when you feel like the first one is a lot, add a second one, it's twice as much, which obviously it would be. There's two of them. But for some reason in my brain, I thought that the second one would somehow be easier. Not the case. And to humble me even further, my Anna, I love my Anna. She is absolutely amazing. But my Anna, she is, she can be a handful. And I feel like from the very beginning, it was always just battle after battle, whether it was like not sleeping or colic or screaming or crying, even as a newborn. Like, it was just like nothing would satisfy this girl. She was a baby who needed a pacifier but would refuse to take one. Yeah, just not much sleep, very difficult. And then as she changed and she grew older, it became more and more difficult. But yes, I feel like she's just turning 4 next week, and I feel like we're at a way better place. But it was very, very, very difficult for a very long time. And I mean, like, screaming, hysterical, high pitched screams that would ring my ears. I for sure have ear damage over the smallest of things. And I had no idea what this was, what was happening. It only happened with me. That was the frustrating part, was Anna would be perfect with everyone else, and I call her my Sour Patch Kid because she's like, first she's sour, then she's sweet. Like, that is 100% my Anna. It's like she gets overwhelmed and has this massive release, but then when she releases afterwards, she's like, okay, I'm good now. Like, it's actually funny because I do the same thing. It's just not as an extreme as her. Like, she just definitely has like way more intense feelings and emotions, so they're way more common and they're way more extreme. But she's definitely like where I am, where she just bottles everything up and then it's like this explosion. But she had lots of them, and they were very severe, and I had no idea how to manage this, what this meant. It wasn't until I found a book that absolutely changed my life forever, called The Highly Sensitive Child, and that is my Anna to a T. And I finally was able to just understand what was happening And then after I could understand her and understand what's happening, I could adjust to her more. And I feel like we're at a pretty good point now where she can communicate way better because she's 4 and she's, we can I can actually explain things to her and she can get it. We've been working on deep breathing exercises and better ways to communicate and blah blah blah, just coping mechanisms, how to redirect that energy to not be so explosive. And she's gonna be a fascinating, amazing, strong, very very strong, independent woman one day. And I'm so already proud of this woman she's gonna be. It's just not it's not fun being the mom of these very very fierce, strong little women. So yes, so she more so clung to me. I was her safe spot to release everything, which I didn't understand. So I always thought it was my fault. And honestly, a lot of people, including my husband, thought it was my fault because it looked that way because it only happened with me. And so from somebody on the outside who doesn't know the whole story and isn't there for the whole day, it looks like, what the heck's wrong with you? Every time you're around this child, she just goes hysterical. And yeah, it got really out of hand a lot, which is an understatement. So yes, so and then I related it to myself. It's I'm the problem. What's going on? But then I was so confused because I'm I don't know, because I've tried everything. I've tried the gentle parent. I've tried being more firm. I've tried just endless love. I tried consequences. I tried everything. I was just constantly trial and erroring on this child to figure out what would work for her and what would work for us, because I was a complete loss. She was completely different than my first child. So I was at a total loss. I didn't know what to do. So I just I cried, I prayed, I begged, and somehow I came across this book called The Highly Sensitive Child, which, like I said, changed my life. If any of you who are listening to this video right now have any similar situations with their child, I highly, highly, highly suggest reading the book, The Highly Sensitive Child. It is so good. It changed my life forever. I also, reading it, really, it's I'm fairly sensitive too. So not only am I learning about my daughter, I'm also learning about myself and how and why the two of us combined, it can be really detrimental sometimes, because I'm really sensitive to all this, extra stimulation and sounds and emotions and different things. And then she is too. So when she's releasing to me, it's extra traumatizing to me. So yeah, it was a very, very dark time, I feel like. But like I said, it is getting better. I found the cure for her is honestly unconditional love, which I feel like is for every human. But my little Anna especially, I feel like we naturally want to shame people, want to control people. What ultimately is out of control. I feel like out of us wanting to control our kids, we will shame them, we will guilt them, we will punish them, we will do whatever it takes to control them. And I learned that that's not the answer. And I feel like when I did try to control her, it got way worse. And so for me, and this is me personally on my own parenting journey, for me, the answer was just unconditional love. And yes, there are going to be natural consequences when you do things, but we do not have to shame and punish and humiliate or any of these other things on top of those natural consequences, which is totally against, I feel like, your normal instincts. So I don't want to say instincts because, like, I feel like instinctively I knew the punishment route wasn't right for me anyway. But I feel like because of our society and how most of us were raised, like I was very much raised where like you do what you say because I said so, and if you don't, like there's going to be consequences. You don't need an explanation, you know, it's just like because I said, so you better freaking do it, or you're going to have your butt whooped or stand in the corner or whatever it is. So I feel like when we are under stress and we are under pressure and it's so intense, you just naturally want to just like and scream and like smack their butt because that's what happened to you. So I learned to, despite how strong that urge is, because that's what you know, that isn't always the right answer. And I learned that through my Anna. And I as hard as it was, like, and those of you who know her and know me, like, know what I'm saying. Most people don't, because she's this, like, perfect, cute little angel with a lot of people, which I'm so thankful for, and that is my true Anna. Like, she is this amazing, amazing girl. But she has some big things she has to try to learn to process out. She's got a lot of big emotions. And so she's working on it. I'm working on it. But I wouldn't change it for the world. It was so difficult, yet it was the best thing that ever happened to me in so many ways. And that's so hard to say because there's so many days where I'm like, why me? I can't do this. Don't do this to me. Why me? Like, I can't handle this. I'm not built for this. Like, I don't even know how many times I have said, countless times, like, I can't do this. Like, I am not built for this. And I feel like I'm still not, but it's forcing me to become built for this. It's forcing me to grow. And that's what both of my children have done for me. Not just Anna, like Audrey, she's completely unique in her own way. My daughter, Audrey, my oldest. And she has this sweet innocence and big heart, and like she'll totally call me out sometimes when I could be judgmental about someone, and she can just sit there and totally call me out and be like, but Mom, can't you see they're just really sad right now? And it's just like, wow, like my little 6-year-old is telling me to be more kind and understanding. Like, that is amazing. So yes, they are both so huge in my life. And I wouldn't change it for the world because it has shaped me and changed in so many different ways. However, that doesn't mean it's been easy. And that doesn't mean that it takes away this feeling that I have of like deep struggles and exhaustion. And that's kind of what I'm working towards. But yes, so after I have my our second daughter, we go through I went through 2 years of this where I was working part-time in the hospital doing 12-hour shifts and kind of being home as much as possible, constantly changing my schedule so that I could, you know, not have to have daycare, constantly working around my husband's schedule, trying to manage to still be a family, going through all the things with my second daughter, Anna. And yeah, just like, I was just always messing with my work schedule, always trying to make trades. And then to top it off, like, I'm also, like I said, a registered nurse in a hospital. So you go to work and you just care for people there. So I felt like I was just caring for everyone at home, going to work, caring for everyone at work. And it just like never stopped, like ever. And I loved it. Like I love being a nurse and taking care of my moms. I'm a labor and delivery nurse, so I take care of the moms and babies, and I love it. I love them. I love my patients. But it's still exhausting. Like I love my children. They are amazing, and it is still exhausting. My husband, I love my husband, and being a wife is still so exhausting. I just feel like all of it, like I love our beautiful lake home, and taking care of it is so exhausting. I love my big, amazing family. I'm one of 11 siblings. I'm pretty close with my siblings, especially like the older ones. I range from like my youngest sibling is younger than my daughter. So obviously I'm not as close with the younger ones because we didn't grow up together, but they still mean everything to me. And just being a part of a big family is amazing, but it's exhausting. So I feel like I have all these things in my life, and where they are, yes, a positive, and yes, I love them, but I also am exhausted by them. Like keeping up with friends, same thing. Like I love them, but it's exhausting to try to have a friendship and life outside of their already chaotic life. So, yes. So I have my Anna, and about 2 years, she was about 2 years old when I applied for travel nursing. Honestly, I was kind of worried. I didn't know how it would go. But I feel like I had no choice. I was in financially a lot of debt, which is also a huge stressor, because I took off a 6-month maternity leave for my daughter, and being a part-time nurse in the hospital, like you can't afford that. Like you can't afford to have 6 months off. So I did what it took to get that time. So that meant acquiring a lot of debt. So yeah, I was at the point where I needed to change something financially, but more importantly, I had to change something at home. I was going on 2 years now with Anna, and I was beyond burnt out. I was pretty broken, I feel like, at that point, not gonna lie. Like, I was every single day I was home, the behaviors were just like escalating, I feel like, and we're just always going, and were horrible, to the point where like I would call my mom crying to come help me because I don't know what else to do. Like I've tried everything, and it got to the point, it was so unhealthy, that I like tiptoed around her on eggshells because I was so terrified of her having another meltdown again, because after literally 2 years of constant screaming, I couldn't handle it anymore. And so I just walked on eggshells around my 2-year-old because I just mentally could not handle one more meltdown. It was a very, dark, hard time. But it was out of that dark, hard time that I realized I had to do something about it. And this can't continue on. That's when I started researching, and that's when I started learning, and that's when I started finding out about highly sensitive people and children. And I got desperate enough to truly fix it. I ended up travel nursing, which was the best thing I could ever do at the time. Not only did it start helping me in the financial burdens, but it also changed my life completely. Like, it was the start of my life transforming as I know it. And I didn't even know it at the time. I'm from a small town. I never really left my small town. I was still working in the town I grew up in. And I ventured out. Anyone who's a travel nurse knows that it's not for the faint of heart. You walk onto a new job site and you're expected to just jump in and know what you're doing and do it. And even though like labor and delivery is pretty much the same anywhere in the United States, each facility has their own quirks and you just have to learn it quick. You don't know anyone and you just learn it on a whim. I never would have guessed how much I love it. I love it. And I would never have guessed that. And I love it for so many reasons. But the big thing that it helped, like I was nervous on how it was going to affect my daughter Anna. Like I'm like, is this going to be a huge decision and am I going to mess her up? But I felt like at that point I was so desperate. It was like, well, it can't get worse than this because like I am literally falling apart and I'm completely shattered. So like if she wants to have a mom, I have to do this. And I have to get away for a little bit. And so I did. And yeah, it's actually been amazing. And it helped with Anna so much. I feel like we had this very toxic connection where it was very close but yet destructive. And she clung to me in an unhealthy way. And when I left, it forced her to start connecting more with her dad, and her grandma and whatnot. And I feel like as I was gone, she opened up to more people and she began to create better and healthier relationships. And I feel like slowly with time, between her branching out and losing this overly tight connection with me, and then also with me being able to have a break, even though it's like working, I wasn't home because like I work like within a few hour radius from home, but it's far enough where when I work a few shifts in a row, I stay the night there because it's just too much driving back and forth each day. So I had just, even those hours after shifts or on your drive to or from work, those hours by myself, it was like heaven. Like it was just, I could finally relax. I could finally let go. I could finally be me. I didn't have to care about anything. Like I just could breathe. Like I wasn't tiptoeing. I wasn't listening to screaming. I wasn't in a crazy house full of things I have to do while a toddler's clinging to my legs, screaming at me hysterically. Like it, I could breathe. And then you learn so much. And I've learned through my own experience that you have to be uncomfortable. Like life is about challenges, and working through them and learning and growing. If you don't put challenges in your life, either God will find them for you and force them on you when you don't want it, or you're not going to grow. So I've learned that the best thing I can do is just continually put myself in situations that make me uncomfortable so I continue to evolve and grow and learn. And travel nursing has been the game changer for that, because you're never really comfortable. And by the time you get comfortable, you have to leave. So it's constantly stretching me. It's constantly putting me in uncomfortable situations. It's constantly making me meet more and more people with different perspectives. It's giving me the luxury of like, I get to walk into this facility and no one knows me. I don't have to be a certain person. I'm not X, Y, and Z's daughter. I didn't go to X, Y, and Z's school. I wasn't friends with X, Y, and Z's friends. Like, they don't know anything about me. I get to be whoever I want to be. And I felt like for the first time, I got to have a glimpse of like what it would be like to just be me, because like they didn't have any expectations of me, who I am personally. I feel like my whole life, I have always been the person people want me to be. I never wanted to let someone down. I am a horrible people pleaser, recovering people pleaser, I should say. And it wasn't healthy. I called myself a chameleon. It's because like I adapted to whatever someone wanted me to be. It's like, you want me to like X, Y, and Z? Yeah, I'll do that. Or you want me to wear whatever? Sure. Like, it was just, I was almost too afraid to even find out who I am. Like, it was just like, I don't want to think about it. Just tell me who you want me to be, and I'll be that person. So like, I became my husband's wife. I became the person he wanted me to be. I became, and not even the person he wanted me to be, the person I thought he wanted me to be. And so I would just watch on, like, oh, he loves fishing. Okay, so now I'm going to start getting into all this fishing stuff with him. Oh, he likes XYZ. I'm going to do that too. Like, it was just, I naturally would adapt to him and anyone else around me. And I could even do it on a whim, like mid-conversation. Someone could like disagree with what I have to say. Instead of me being like, yeah, we have different opinions, it's like I had to somehow transform what I say and think so that it would correlate with them. So I don't have any sort of rejection. And that's what I'm learning. I'm doing a lot of trauma healing right now. And it's fear of rejection is honestly what it all comes down to, which I'll get more into that. But yeah, so I'm walking into this facility and I realize no one knows anything about me. Like, I can wear whatever I want. I can say whatever I want. They don't know anything about me. And if they don't like me, like, I'm never going to see them again. And so I started to get a little bit more, like, what's the word? Like, a little more brave. I don't know, spunky. I don't know what the word is, but I started to like slowly cast out a few things here and there of like, oh, well, I have this and this idea, or I have this and this idea, or I like this, or I, just throwing out something. And next thing you know, I'm having the most amazing conversations with the most amazing people all around the state. And it is the best thing ever. Like, I have learned so much. I feel like before travel nursing and before my own personal experience of whatever this is, growth, development, awakening, whatever you want to call it, I was so closed-minded. I was so like, put everything in a box. And just like, this is what it is. Like that black and white thinking of like, this is good, this is bad, this is like, it was just black and white versus like now it's like I have all these colors and I can take in and listen to all these amazing ideas and all these amazing people and concepts and like get to witness different cultures and how people do things and religions and like all of these different things that make people unique. And I'm just experiencing it in a way I would have never been able to before. If I would have just stayed with my same job, I would have been going day in and day out to the same job, talking to the same people, doing the same thing and going home and doing the same thing at home. And I realized like that is not me. I am a person that needs to be switch things up. I need to learn. I need to grow. Yeah, I need to contribute to society in some way, and not just as a nurse. Yes, I know like me as a nurse is contributing to society, but I want more. Like I have this thirst and this drive to learn more and then share it. And I would never have been able to be there, I feel like, without that step I made, travel nursing. So not that any of you have to up and leave and be a travel nurse, but my suggestion to you is look at your life. Are you too comfortable? Is your life too routine? Are you too safe? My recommendation is to switch something up. It doesn't have to be a job change. It could just be something super simple as like joining your local adult sports team, joining a event group, whatever it is. The possibilities are endless, but just something that feels uncomfortable. Like if it feels uncomfortable but yet intriguing, you should do it and just see what happens. Yeah, I think we need more challenges in life. And not that as I'm having this video about how exhausted I am, but we do need to have challenges. And the bottom line is, I know this exhaustion is temporary. And I was gonna get to that, but okay, so I'm getting way off topic. I'm talking way too long. But yeah, thanks for listening to my story. But anyway, so I start travel nursing. I do all this. It's life changing. I'm growing. I'm doing all these things. As I'm going through these, like it's not, and I shouldn't say it's amazing, like it's all sunshine and rainbows. It's amazing in the sense that it has opened up a door for me that I feel like I wouldn't have had otherwise. However, it has a lot of challenges and it's very uncomfortable, and it's very exhausting. So I still am a mom with 2 kids and a home and a wife and a big family and all that. Nothing disappeared, right? But now I'm working full time instead of part time. And I'm also driving, few hours to get to work each way, and also staying nights or days, whether I'm on days or nights. I work 12-hour shifts. So I'm spending that time in between shifts away from home. So all of the things I do don't just disappear. I don't have little fairies coming and cleaning up everything for me at home and taking care of everything. When I come home, it still needs to be done. So, yes, it's not less exhausting. It's more exhausting, but it's also fantastic at the same time. And, but yes, it's had its challenges. I live in an ambulance when I'm working. If you've seen other videos of me in the ambulance. So in between shifts, when I'm just basically just sleeping, I just sleep in my ambulance. That's converted to an RV. And so, yeah, I have my little RV and I sleep in that in between shifts. And I've had lots of issues with it. Just like everything else. Like it's a vehicle, it breaks down, it has problems with it. I've had to learn. I'm a girl who I didn't even know how to hardly put air in my tires, and now I'm learning all this stuff about a diesel truck that I've never had to learn before. It's broken down several times, and I've had to figure it out on my own. A lot of stressful, crazy things there, but again, growing. And just being away from your family can be hard and tolling. And it does feel like when you get home that you have so much to catch up on. But I think the hardest part, and it's not just for traveling moms, I felt like this just at large working mom and just a mom in general, is the crushing guilt. Like, I felt like so much guilt, but yet this combination of like, I feel guilty, am I gonna mess up my kids, but yet I feel like it's still like the best thing I can do for them. And I physically have seen that, like, where how much it's helped me and my daughter's relationships and the struggles and different things. Like, but then I always think like, you have this constant guilt in your head. And even though I only work 3 days a week, a lot of moms work 5 days a week. I have more time off than I'm working, and yet I'm still crippled in total guilt that I'm not there with my kids all the time. So you're always playing those games with yourself mentally. So yeah, that comes with its own challenges. But when I started travel nursing and I started having more time to myself, and I'm starting to like, I started to have these little twinklings of like, okay, who am I? And it honestly did start out with me completely breaking and shattering at home before I started travel nursing. Of like, I definitely was going through depression stages in shutting down when I was going through all these hard things at home with Anna and work and everything else. And it made me start realizing like, how did I get here? Like, and then it make you question things like, who are you? What do I like? Like, it makes you realize like, when you have these really hard moments, it kind of opens up your eyes to look around, and you're like, what the heck is going on? Like, who am I? How did I get here? Like, what is this? And it just makes you look at it. So once I had that moment and I started questioning it, then I started having more alone time, travel nursing, and I was able to kind of look into it more. So like, I started having time to myself where I could just reflect or journal or question myself or whatever. And like, I would ask myself like, who am I? Like, I shared in a prior video of like a poem that I wrote of like, I didn't even know who I was. Like, who was this woman inside of me? Like, there was very obvious this woman who was inside of me who wasn't who I was. But like, I suppressed that woman. But now I'm waking up to realizing that I suppressed her in the first place. And then it's like, well, who is this woman? Like, this that I'm seeing right now, all of this that's happening, like, that's not me. Who is me? You know? And that sparked this whole transforming journey for me. And so it's not one of those moments where you wake up and all of a sudden it's just like, I see everything now and everything's all clear and blah, blah, blah. Like, I have moments of clarity. Yes, I've had lots of them. They are amazing. But then you get smacked into reality of, like I said, kind of the beginning of this video, of like, you are waking up and you're having this realization and you're like, oh, who am I? And you're kind of digging into this. And then it's like, oh, smack right back into reality. Oh, you got to go work. Oh, you got to take care of your kids. Oh, you got to clean your house. You got to do this. And you had to like put that to the side. And I feel like I'm almost living this dual life. And I know eventually the two will merge, but it's very dualistic right now, where it's like, I feel like there's this old Natalie, or I shouldn't even say old, because I feel like the real Natalie has always been there, but it's just been covered. So I feel like there's the real Natalie, we'll say, and then there's the false Natalie, is probably a better way to say it. And I feel like they're really clashing right now, and it's like I kind of am switching between like fake, not fake, like I go on the real Natalie for a while, and then I'm fake Natalie for a while, and I'm like really struggling to put these together, but it's coming. where I feel like the goal is like the real Natalie is you to everyone. So I'm not there yet. I'm discovering a little bit who this real Natalie is. But she's not unburied yet. She's still in hiding a little bit. So with time. But um but because of all of this, like I feel like I've been going through these big transformations mentally, spiritually, and growing and questioning things and all this stuff. And through that, I started trauma healing. And I had no idea what I was getting into. Um, and it is amazing and terrible at the same time. So yeah. So just to backtrack, I kind of covered, 19-year-old getting in and settling in me to now travel nurse me and all those struggles. And then I kind of get dumped with all this trauma work, which again is transformative, but exhausting. So as I'm starting to dive into trauma work, I didn't really know what it was, but I slowly was kind of coming up to things here and there. And then over time, I just kind of found myself really diving into it. I have had a lot of childhood traumas. I have had several encounters of sexual abuse and attempts of sexual abuse. I've had just a range of different things, emotional, sexual, just different traumas that really affected me, and I had no idea how much it was affecting me. And it honestly wasn't until I recognized what it even was that I realized how much it was consuming my life. So I had all of these struggles that I have struggled with forever. And I just thought I was broken. I thought that I was messed up. Broken is probably the right word. Like, my husband would often ask me, I'd come up with all these little self-diagnoses and this and that. And he's like, why do you do that? Like, why are you always looking for a label for yourself? Why are you always trying to diagnose yourself with something like there's something wrong? And I realized that it's because I felt like I was broken. Like I felt like there was something wrong, but I could never pinpoint what. And I thought it was me. I just thought I was a broken person. And it wasn't until I started digging into these traumas where it's like, oh, yeah, I see why I would feel and then act this way. Then I started getting into like your nervous system and how your nervous system responds to trauma. And it's like, oh, yeah, I've been living every day in a traumatic response. So, like the fight, flight, freeze, I was living that daily. Every day I was on edge, anxious, looking around, looking for everything around me, hyper focusing, hyper obsessing. What's even other things like physically just like tense and anxious and just all those like fight or flight things, always on edge. And then I'd have these bouts of freeze where it's just like the only way I can explain it is everything's so exhausted that I just become paralyzed. Like everything is so overwhelming that I just freeze. I'm just paralyzed. Like I feel like I can't get out of bed. I feel like I can't do basic everyday tasks. When I get to the point where I'm just I've been in fight or flight for so long, and it's so much and it's overwhelming and it's too much for me. I just freeze and my body just literally shuts down and I can't do anything. Like, I have to chug a gallon of coffee to shower or to do the dishes or like to try to get up and take care of my kids and all the things. Like, and I would do it. I would force myself to, like, you bet, like, hand over the caffeine because I can't stop, right? Or I would do other things like keep myself busy and distracted and preoccupied, and running 100 miles an hour so that I didn't have to think about anything. When before I had kids, I was a really big party girl, and coped with constantly being intoxicated because if I was drunk, I couldn't feel, and I couldn't feel my emotions, and I couldn't feel all those feelings that I've been shoving down for so long. So yeah, after I had kids and I had to sober up and I went through all that stress of being a parent and my second child and the work and all this stuff, and then my childhood stuff starts blossoming up. Um, it was just like, boom, like this is too much. Like, and the thing that's interesting with the childhood trauma is it's interesting because it's always there in the sense of how you're responding to it. So my life has already been consumed in my struggles from trauma, right? Like, you're living in a, what I'd call like a traumatic state, that fight, flight, freeze, like literally in your nervous system. So you have all the effects of living in fight, flight, or freeze. Yet there's this beautiful thing called disassociation, in a trauma response too, which I feel like I probably used a lot, where you disassociate what's happening in your body to, like, it's from XYZ. Because, like, XYZ is too painful, so we're not going to go there and we're just going to bury it deep, pretend it never happened, move on. And then when you're having all these problems, you're like, why the heck do I have all these problems? And they're like, but then when you start trauma working, it's like, oh, the problem is because I buried X, Y, and Z because that's way too freaking scary and horrible, and I never want to look at that again. So trauma healing is interesting because, at least in my own experience, what you're doing is you're recognizing where you are struggling in your nervous system, where you're struggling in life, so to say, your just your struggles. And when you dig into them deep enough, you find the core of what's causing it. So, like, what I do, my own little self practices I do is, like, I'll ask myself, why? So I have a thought, I'm a bad mom, right? Could be something that pop up. And I'll ask myself, why? And then I'll say the next thing, and why, until I get to this core or something, and it just shoots out of me. And it's like, oh my gosh. I went from, I feel like a bad mom to 6 Ys later. It's like all of a sudden this thing from my past I shoved down because I'm shooting up, like, and it's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that these are correlated. You almost forget that childhood stuff even happened because you buried it so deep. And it wasn't until I started, like, unburying some of this stuff and processing through it. And, like, the point of childhood trauma healing isn't to, like, I'm going to remember X, Y, and Z, and I'm just going to sit here and, like, be a victim the rest of my life because this happened to me. It's like, you recognize what's happening in your body. You acknowledge it. You find out why it's happening. And then when you find out why, you process through it so you can let go. So the painful part for me, and it is excruciating, I will just say that, like excruciatingly painful, was acknowledging what happened to you. So you can, once you recognize what's going on, it forces you to look at what you buried because you never want to, it's so painful, you never want to see it again. And it forces you to unbury it. But then I don't unbury it and keep it forever and hold it and be sad. I unbury it. I look at it. I feel all the things that I need to feel. I process through it and I let it go. And it's that letting go that slowly, each time, it's freeing you up and freeing you from all these things that have been holding you down for so long and haunting you. And like, you don't even recognize that those things are affecting you today. Each and every single day, they're affecting how you are as a mom, how you are as a wife, how you are at work. Everything. It affects everything. And I didn't realize, like, my whole life literally revolved around these trauma responses. And I was in such denial. Like I said, I loved Disassociation, where I was in such denial that these bad things happened to me that, like, I'm just like, oh, yeah, whatever, not a big deal. And, like, I'm not going to think about that and living on with life. And I go, and distract, and please, and live this busy, crazy, chaotic, whatever life to keep myself too distracted to look at that. So I'm shutting down. And I have no idea it's because I'm still holding on to all this baggage. I didn't realize me jamming all that stuff down is destroying me. It's destroying my family. It's destroying everything. But the hard part is in order to actually heal and move on and get better, I have to be willing and brave enough to unbury those things and look at them. And that looking at them part is the absolute, it's horrible. Like, I grew up having panic attacks. I grew up having all kinds of things. I used to have to take, when I was younger, they prescribed me Xanax because I'd have severe panic attacks. And those panic attacks I had to take Xanax for did not compare at all to the breakdowns I had unbearing these traumas. But it was also totally different. So I felt like when I had these panic attacks, like it was like I'd be so overwhelmed and I would have this big release, but I never felt like I felt better in the sense I no longer am panicking, but I felt like my problems didn't go away. Whereas when I go through the trauma, it's like, it's so excruciating and intense and painful, and it will completely destroy you, but it was very short-lived. And it's like I had this insane release. Like, I don't know, it's like physical, like in my body. It was mainly usually like in my chest area. Sometimes I'd feel like literally as I'm like hysterically like crying so hard I can't even breathe, and it's like it feels like my chest is being ripped open. Like, physically hurts, excruciatingly and emotionally like physically and emotionally painful, excruciating. But the few ones I had like that were very short-lived. When I had panic attacks, they'd go on for hours. These were like the most intense thing I've ever experienced in my life, but they could maybe be 10 minutes. And then, and this is my personal story. I have no idea what anyone else's trauma healing is like. But, and it feels like it's getting literally ripped out of me physically. But then it was kind of like that. Like all of a sudden it would just like get ripped out. And then I was like, whew, like you just feel calm. And it's not like that disassociation, like it never happened. It's like this calming peace. Like it happened and I'm okay. And it's just way different than anything else I ever experienced. And I'm only at the beginning of my journey. I still have a lot to go. And I felt like the more you dig into it, and it's not like I'm sitting here thinking like, what's a childhood trauma thing? No, that's not how it works. I mean digging into it as in digging into myself, as in like, what do I genuinely like? What do I not like? What am I doing? What am I thinking? How am I behaving? It's like, for example, I could like X, Y, and Z, but I won't do X, Y, and Z because, and I'll ask myself, why? Why don't you want to do that? And it could go down to like, because I'm scared, like people are going to judge me and I'm going to be rejected. And then that could go into like X, Y, and Z happened to me, so I'm terrified of being rejected. So it's like slowly, as like these random things keep coming up and you slowly release them, it all of a sudden isn't so hard to do the things you want to do. There's not as much holding you back. And yeah, I still have a ways to go. But yeah, as I've been kind of digging into, sorry, I'm holding my cat. I'm getting cat hair all over my face. As I'm getting into more of myself, I should say, it's like when you begin your healing journey, your spiritual journey, whatever you want to call this, growth, you just you realize and recognize just more things in general than you ever have. Like you kind of, I feel like before me going through this process, I was just living kind of blind. Like everything is just by happenstance. Nothing's linked, nothing's correlated. It's just, it is what it is. You don't think twice about anything that's happening. And as you go through this journey, you're just more aware in general. Like you just realize like just random patterns and just random things that, and then once you recognize a pattern or something else, like it just makes you think more like, that's interesting. I wonder why that is. And it just, as the more you start to become aware, the more you start questioning and the more you look into things. And so I think that's really what's all that's been happening. And it's a process over time. Like I've had these massive releases in trauma healing and then not really much for a few months. And then I might have a bout of something again. It just depends on what's being flagged. And I do feel like everyone has their own thing at their own time for a reason. I do feel like, you can't force yourself into it. I feel like it is a process that you can definitely push it off when you shouldn't be. Like you can try to ignore it. But I do feel like eventually it's going to slap you in your face in not a nice way if you don't do it. But I do feel like, you can't force it, but yet you can try to run away and hide from it. But you're only hurting yourself because, like, while, yes, the processing of the trauma is, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, it's excruciatingly painful. Living in constant anxiety and sadness and self-destruction, that is way worse. I would way rather look and process what I've gone through and let go than drag that stuff with me the rest of my life. Like, all of that stuff is stopping me from being the person I'm here to be, the person I'm created to be. We are, like I've said so many times, we are completely unique individual beings with very special gifts. And you will never be able to find it or live it when you're carrying around all that baggage. So while that may seem painful, it's nothing in comparison to the pain you will feel the rest of your life, and then the regret of living a life you were not intended for and not fulfilling your purpose. So I feel like it's so worth it. But yeah, prepare yourself. And I feel like I do want to do a whole video on it one day, because there's so much about it that I've just learned personally. I have had some help in my trauma healing process. I do have a really good therapist who more so focuses on trauma healing. And I've come across a lot of people who've helped me, both like in person and just like online people. I have podcasts and YouTube videos and all of that. So much help out there. I do feel like as I've been going through my process, like all the right people kind of come at the right time and help you through it. You just have to be willing to be open enough to receive it. But it's there, and I feel like it's helped me a lot. And yes, you're not alone. And I feel like for those who are starting a healing journey, a spiritual journey, like I said, I want to do a whole video on it, because there are some very important things I do want to talk about that I learned my own hard way of like preparing for it. Like, it is extremely intense. Preparing your close loved ones for it so they're not completely shocked and like hit from left field when all of a sudden you're changing and going through all these things. Preparing for the physical exhaustion and changes, which is I think where I'm at right now, is like the exhaustion part. And just like how intense it is and how painful it is. Like, you need support through it, because sometimes it's so painful. I feel like when you unbury that trauma, and I feel like when we experience trauma in general, people feel like because they had that hardship, they can't let it go. They have guilt to let it go. And so sometimes someone might find that trauma, say that they buried, that was too painful. They find that trauma and they cling to it. And then they start identifying with it. And then it's overwhelming and it's painful, because like that excruciating, horrible thing that happens and then you release, like they don't release. They cling to that excruciating, painful thing. And then they identify with it. And I'm telling you, it's so painful. I truly believe that's probably what causes a lot of suicides, is finding that trauma and clinging to it, and you're unable to let it go. And so I do feel like it's very important to have support, whether it's a counselor or a close friend or someone or something, to keep you grounded, to keep you moving and help you release. Because if you don't release, that's when it will destroy you. You have to see your trauma, accept the trauma, feel what you need to feel, and let it go. So, yes, like I said, I should do a whole video on it because there's so much that I've learned. But that's honestly probably one of my biggest advice, is like do your research on it and get support and prepare yourself and others for it, because like it is really intense. And also just to give yourself grace, and that's why I'm telling myself that right now doing this video, because the last 3 days I've been in just this kind of like mini short-lived depression of my like release day, I should say, like when I build everything up and everything just feels like everything's going wrong and you forget all the good things. And I had a couple of bad days where I just felt down in the dumps. And this is to me also to just give yourself grace. Now that I'm starting to see this, and this is why I love talking out loud, it's like, girl, you went through a lot of crap. A lot. And even through high school and everything else, like everyone has their own things. And I went through a lot of things that really affected me. And that's the thing with trauma. It's like, it doesn't have to be severe for it to affect you in a severe way, and vice versa. Someone might have something very severe happen to them, but they were able to process it and release it in a way that it doesn't affect them. But all the things that acquired to me over my childhood and younger years and leading up to my adulthood dramatically affected my life. So that's kind of the main thing with trauma. It's not about, was it a capital T trauma? Did something major happen? Which obviously those are usually more detrimental, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be simple things that completely traumatize you, and traumatize you. And what I mean by that is what trauma is. When you're traumatized, what it is your body not feeling safe. So for some reason, whatever happened to you, you don't feel safe. And so that's why you live in fight, flight, or freeze. We're not designed to not feel safe chronically. We're designed to have a tiger run at us and we feel unsafe and run away or fight or flee or like freeze or whatever you need to do to escape an attacker and then calm back down. But the problem with these traumas and chronic PTSD is something really correlated with this, is it's continually going. So whatever that thing was that made you feel unsafe, and it doesn't matter how big or small it was, whatever made you feel unsafe as a child or later in your life, anytime something comes up that reminds you of that feeling or a situation or whatever, it's going to trigger all of these emotions and all of these feelings that and that you don't feel safe. And so, especially if you have several of these triggers, that's where people can live all day, every day in this trauma state of I don't feel safe, because everything around them is reminding them that they're not safe, even if they literally are. And I didn't realize that's the thing. It's not obvious until you start paying attention to yourself. It's not obvious that you're living in this state. And I kind of didn't want to go this long in a conversation, but I'm just going to do it. I knew there was something wrong. I didn't realize it was this. And I felt like I was tossed in and out of therapy my whole life as a kid and as an adult and whatever. And I feel like it never really helped me. Like, talk therapy can only go so far. And I'm learning so much about this in trauma healing, which makes so much sense, because in talk therapy, you're just saying what happened. You're reliving it. You're not processing it. You're not letting go. You're not physically releasing it from your body. And so sometimes it can just re-traumatize people again and again and again and again. So it's like there's a lot of other ways to do this trauma healing. That's just not just talk therapy. And so I went through all these things, never really helped me. I got diagnosed with ADHD. And basically their answer is like, oh, take a depression med, take some ADHD pills, talk to a counselor, which I never got help. I felt like it never helped me. Yeah, I don't know, the whole ADHD thing. This is what I wanted this video to be on originally, but I was so nervous to talk, and I'm like, I just told myself, just start talking, and whatever comes, comes, and just be real. And I have so many thoughts on my diagnosis with ADHD. And before I get into anything, and I'm going to try to keep it not too long, but before I get into anything, I want to say that I am not a doctor. I'm not by any means a professional of diagnosing anything. And this is not for anyone's advice on what they should do. This is just my pure insight and my thoughts about myself. So yeah, I feel like we've talked about, I've been kind of struggling with all these things. And a few years ago, when I was really struggling with like motherhood and keeping things organized and clean and whatever, and like I felt like I was just a hot mess all over the place, just desperate for help. And they sent me in for an evaluation, and I got tested for ADHD, and it came back positive for like the combination type, so the attentive and hyperactive, or whatnot. And like when you look at ADHD, yeah, I felt like that was for sure an accurate diagnosis. Like I had all the symptoms. I would go from zero energy, dead state, to hyper focused, and like that, like going from like I can't pay attention to anything, I'm exhausted and dead, to like hyper focused, obsessive on something I was really into. I had a lot of impulsivity, things like food is a coping mechanism. I would have sugar like crazy, like I'm totally addicted to sugar. Caffeine, I had to like constantly have caffeine. And like shopping things. I was just a very addictive personality to begin with. I was kind of like an airhead. People would call me like a dumb blonde airhead. My head's in the clouds. Just a lot of like typical women with ADD, ADHD traits. Couldn't keep anything organized, lose everything, forget things, interrupt people all the time. All this stuff. Like when I remember when I got diagnosed with ADHD, I'm like, oh my gosh, my life makes sense. Like, yes, this is what I've been looking for. Check, 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 like all of it. But it wasn't until I started my own healing and spiritual journey that it made me question everything. And I realized what mimics ADHD is trauma responses. And I'll give some examples. So like the dumb blonde, your head living in the clouds, like that's disassociation. You could have like the addictive spending and eating and sugar and caffeine and all these things. It's like a coping mechanism, but the main thing I would call it for is almost like a disassociation again, in the sense of keeping you distracted and constantly feeding this like dopamine rush to feel happy and not like acknowledge your struggles. And also it's like a coping mechanism for like when you're feeling down. Like if I felt sad, I'd grab sugar. If I felt tired in the freeze state, I'd grab caffeine. Like I would, that feeling of like, so when I think of like ADHD and how I go from like when I'm understimulated, I'm like dead, like, and when I'm exhausted, it's just like this exhaustion. I can't even explain it. You're just stuck on the couch and you feel like you can't function no matter how hard you try. And I'm learning like that's freeze state in your nervous system. When you have trauma responses and you're living in a trauma response, like when, and naturally in our world, we're made so say like we're going to use the example of a tiger chasing you. So say the tiger chases you, and you try to run away, but then it catches up to you, so you fight, and then you realize that you're going to lose, so you play dead. That's like the stages of like kind of your fight, flight, or freeze. So when your nervous system is so overloaded, or when you feel so unsafe, or whatever it is that triggers it, you can go into a freeze state. So it's like you're literally like, it's like the play dead state. Like you're just, and that's the only way I could ever explain it, is I always say like, I feel paralyzed. And that's exactly what it feels like. It's like I feel paralyzed, and the only way I can even try to get up is with an IV of caffeine, or my ADHD stimulants. Like, then I can function, but it was like this dead state, and I'd have to force myself out of it. And then I'd have the opposite side. When you get really into something, then you like hyper obsessively are glued to it. Like ADHD, it's like when you're not interested, you can't pay attention. When you are interested, it's like you can't get enough, and you're just like obsessing. 100% do that. Which again is like a it's getting late at night, my brain's not working, but like a trauma response. So yeah, I just started realizing, I was just going through all this trauma response things. I was like, like all these things that I thought related to ADHD are also related to trauma. And so being that I have the traumas that I have, the trauma response would make a lot of sense. And I do feel like I'm living in that trauma response. But it took me, therapy and everything else to start like recognizing it on a day-to-day basis, everything that was a trauma response. And like I said, I was in the thick, like I was living in trauma response all the time, every day. But yeah, and so here I'm thinking, it's ADHD. I just have ADHD. My brain's broken, right? Like I can take this med and it'll be all better. Well, stimulants help. They wake me up. They keep me focused. They keep me motivated. They keep me going. It never fixed anything. It was just forcing my body to go when my body was saying no. And when you get into the science of your nervous system and what's happening and the hormones and the chemicals and how they're all off when you're living in this fight or flight response for chronic long periods of time, it is wearing, like, your cortisol levels are chronically like too high, and your adrenals are always going and are shutting down, and it's causing all those physical symptoms of the freeze and everything else. Well, it made me think, okay, so yes, I can take this pill, this Vyvanse, and I can get what I need to get accomplished. I can focus, I can clean my house, I can take care of my kids, I can do whatever I need to do, like I can focus and I can get it done. Okay, yes, check. But what is that doing to my body at a chemical level? So like when I'm taking that drug, it's increasing my adrenaline. It's increasing my cortisol levels. It's increasing these chemicals that, if I'm living in a fight or flight response, are already out of whack and are already too chronically high. So now, like if I'm already at this chronically high state and I take this med to get something done, it's like spikes it up, and I'm even harming my system even more. And I would realize that with these, after I take my meds, like I'd have a hard crash after. Like I have headaches, I have I'm exhausted, I go right back to that freeze mode. And then you just had to have another one and another one to get you out of that. And it's this horrible cycle. It's like the more you have them, the more you have to have them, because you're just burning your system out even more. My system's already burned out because I'm living in fight, flight, or fight or flight mode. Okay. So my body is already like, hey, we're done. Like, that's why you're freezing, is because like, we're done with this stuff. We can't do it anymore. So my body's shutting down. Well, here I am, like, well, I can't shut down. This society's not going to let me. So let me pop this pill. I'm going to force you to wake back up. So then it jumps everything back up, and then it's going to crash harder. And like, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say on like how I just think of how that would work. And I haven't really talked to anyone about it in a medical standpoint. Like, these are just purely my thoughts. But it's like, wouldn't that harm me? Like, I'm beginning to realize when I'm living in this fight, flight, freeze and trauma healing and all this, like, and listening to my body again, I'm obviously exhausted for a reason. Like, my body is shutting down for a reason. Like, maybe we should listen to our bodies and find out why it's shutting down to begin with. And then when I sit back and I think of all the things I've gone through in my life, all the things in the last few years, just this, last year alone of travel nursing and with my kids and behavior issues and trauma healing and excruciating pain. I've been having childhood flashbacks. Like, the more I kind of awoken things, so to say, I would start having flashbacks, and they were excruciatingly painful. And they're things that were so painful, I literally forgot. Like, I literally suppressed them so deep that I forgot them. And it wasn't until I started going through this that they started triggering and trickling back. Very painful. And just the everyday stuff of this chaotic life. And it never stops. Your vehicle's breaking down. You got to go to work. Your kids are crying, this and that. Your house is a mess and blah, blah, blah. It's like all the things, all the time. And then I'm sitting here mad at myself and guilt tripping myself and shaming myself because I'm so exhausted. And so I feel so lazy. And like, if I could just get my life together, that's what I think. Like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you get your life together? Why do you feel so exhausted? Why are you so lazy? What's wrong with you? As I'm like paralyzed. And it kind of just dawned on me, like, yeah, you're paralyzed. You've been running for years. Like, I kept going and going and going so I wouldn't have to feel. So I wouldn't have to think. I always had my brain going. I ran 100 miles an hour. I always had to be on my phone, talking to someone, planning something, taking care of my kids, working, traveling. If I wasn't traveling, I was planning another trip. If I wasn't doing that, I was shopping, or I was looking for food, or I was doing something. Like, I constantly had my brain going all the time. Constantly. It never stopped, because if it stops, you feel, and if you feel, it hurts. So it just runs. And again, ADHD thing, right? Our brain keeps running 100 miles an hour. Yes, it does, because you don't want to know what happens when it stops. And that's what I found out for myself. The more time I spent in quiet, I tried meditating. I tried spending time alone, just, quiet, reflecting, feeling. I just feel some kind of physical pain in my body and pay attention to it, or emotional something, a trigger, and I'd pay attention to it. And when you stop your brain from running and you actually feel, it freaking hurts. But that's the only way you can get better. So your brain runs and runs and runs. You run and run and run. I'm a mom. Like I said, a working mom, doing all these things, full-time, travel, working mom. I was traveling on vacations on average every other month. Like, I can't afford that. I don't have time for that. My kids, while it was fun and all, like, I love traveling, don't get me wrong, like, I will be doing it more. But it's all about practicality. Was I doing the traveling because I genuinely enjoy it? Yes. But was it also a distraction? Yes. Was I putting myself into further debt to fulfill it? Yes. Is that healthy? No. Like, I need to find this equal balance, and traveling needs to become a passion that I'm doing for me and my family that's not harming me and making me go into debt and making me be exhausted and everything else, because I'm literally living out of backpacks, because as soon as you come home from a trip, you're planning another one, or you're spending the weekend away. Like, we live in our vehicles. We were always on the go. I was never home. There were many, many, many months where I was home for an entire day for less than what I can count on a hand. And I'm just realizing, like, yeah, that's been my life for a couple years, with a kid with all these behavior things, and my other kid I'm trying to raise, and all these things, right? Yeah, no wonder why you're exhausted, and your body literally has been in fight or flight freeze mode for as long as I can remember. So even when I'm physically still, my body is going crazy. My nervous system is literally going crazy. It's constantly hyper aware of everything, constantly searching, scanning everything, anxiously just awaiting a disaster. Yeah, I'm exhausted. It would make sense. And I was sitting here thinking, like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get my life together? And it's like, girl, you are. You gotta be patient, and you gotta be kind to yourself, and you gotta give yourself grace, because you're doing all this really, really, really hard work that's gonna pay off in the end. But you need to just chill, you know? If that means you spend an entire day on the couch one day, that's okay. You're gonna survive. I think I've been so caught up these last few days of, like, focusing on the negatives, on where I'm failing, where I'm not good enough, instead of realizing how far I've come. I've come so, so far. And it's just beginning. And I forget that. I would never be here in a million years talking on YouTube about this stuff if I haven't come as far as I have. Even from even from 6 months ago. 6 months, I think it was about 6 months ago, I went on my first ever women's retreat. It's the most magical experience of my life. Just the amount of growth I have accomplished from then till now is astonishing. And I totally forget it. Like, you forget in the moment, you're like, oh, this sucks. But you forget how far you've come, how much you've done, how much you've learned and grown. And it's amazing. And so I should be proud of myself and not beating myself up that I'm not there yet. You know, it's like you start doing this trauma work and healing and whatever, and you're like, where's my magic results? How come I'm not happy and living my best life yet? It's like, it takes time. I feel like we're just so used to fast, quick results. That's why we take Adderall. That's why we take meds, because we don't want to address the real problem. We just want to be productive. We don't actually want to heal. We just want to put a Band-Aid on it so we can get through today. We don't care about our bodies in the long run. We care about today. And I think that's the problem with society and this fast pace worry about today, is we unknowingly are destroying our future just to have an okay day today. And I have to remember that I have to be willing to have hard days now to have a better future. So I'm going to leave it at that. I have a whole new theory too that goes with my trauma response and ADHD. And I'm not going to get into it now because it's been long enough. I've talked your ear off for 2 hours. But the other side, and I'm just going to have a little tidbit, the other side that I want to get into with ADHD that I'm passionate about, I'm just getting into and I love and it excites me, is feminine and masculine energy, and how I also feel like that correlates with ADHD as well. So I have a few theories about ADHD. I think a big one is the trauma response. But yeah, I want to come back to another session on ADHD in general. But I'm just going to leave tonight at just me being honest about just being exhausted and this craziness we go through. This is the life we live in this current modern society is for robots, not humans. I could do a whole topic on that. And trying to live in this society and do all the things and do all the hard trauma work and do all the other, it's too much. And I gotta take care of myself. I have to give myself grace. And I hope that if there's one person out there that's listening to this who can relate, I want you to know that you are not alone. You are not lazy. You are not worthless. You are exhausted, and you're exhausted for a reason. And instead of doing what we do, of beating ourselves up and asking ourselves what's wrong with us and saying that we're bad moms and we're bad partners and we just can't get our life together and our brain is broken, and if we could just have this magical pill, all will be okay. I'm here